What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our free daily LSAT class. Today, we are tackling one of the LSAT's most deceptive question types. Specifically, we're talking about flaw questions. Now, flaw questions are the ones that will make you feel smart while they quietly steal your points. So if you've ever read an argument and thought to yourself, it sounds wrong, but I can't explain why, that's what we're going to fix today. Over the next hour or so, I'm going to show you the most common flaw patterns. We'll do several LSAT drills together. And by the end, the goal is that you'll be able to call out bad logic like a lawyer cross-examining a witness. Now, flaw questions are one of the most common types on the LSAT logical reasoning section, along with necessary assumption and inference. And so learning how to tackle flaw questions accurately and efficiently can make a huge difference in your score. And if you can get good at flaw questions, you're not just improving in one tiny area, you're improving a core skill that shows up across almost every single type of logical reasoning question, because a flaw is just bad reasoning. And once you can see bad reasoning clearly, everything else gets easier. And so if you've ever been in this position where you stared at a logical reasoning question and you thought to yourself, wait, what exactly is wrong with this argument? You're not alone. Flaw questions are tricky precisely because they sound straightforward. Your job is to find the flaw in the reasoning, which sounds easy, but what they're really testing is your ability to notice what's missing, the step that the author assumes but never proves. And most students make the mistake of focusing on what's there in the argument, the words on the page or on the screen. But top scorers focus on what is not there, what is missing. And that's the difference. The LSAT wants to know, can you notice invisible gaps in logic? Because that's what makes you think like a lawyer. In law, spotting missing assumptions is basically the job. And I've been teaching the LSAT for the past 20 years. And back when I first started, I struggled with flaw questions too. Back then, I thought logic was about memorizing terms or formulas. But it's actually about relationships, how one idea connects to another, and where that connection breaks down. And at LSAT Unplugged, when we work with students one-on-one, this is typically one of the first breakthroughs. We help our students stop reading passively and start diagnosing arguments like doctors do, where they can see the symptoms, the patterns, the weak spots, and once they can name the problem, everything clicks. And so that's what we're going to do here. And let's start off as simply as possible. Because before you can fix the flaw, you've got to know what you're being tested on. You want to look for question stems that say things like, which one of the following describes a flaw in the reasoning? Or the argument is most vulnerable to criticism because, or a questionable technique used in the argument is. And so anytime you see words like flaw, vulnerable to criticism, or questionable reasoning, you're dealing with a flaw. And you might be thinking, well, why does this even matter? And it matters because knowing the question type instantly tells you what your job is. You're not looking for new evidence or an assumption to strengthen. You are analyzing how the reasoning itself breaks. And if you can recognize this early, it's going to save you a ton of time because you're not wasting energy guessing what they're asking you to do. You already know they want you to ID the gap between the evidence and the conclusion. And so flaw questions are just asking you one thing. Does the conclusion follow from the evidence? And typically, the answer is going to be no. There is a leap or a gap of some kind. The author believes something that the evidence doesn't actually support. And your job is to find that leap, which is the missing connection. So imagine the evidence and the conclusion as two cliffs with a bridge between them. When the bridge is solid, the argument holds up. But when the bridge is cracked or it's missing pieces, that's your flaw. And some flaws are smaller cracks, which are subtle, they're a bit hard to spot, but others are massive gaps that you could drive a truck through. Now, either way, once you can see the gap, you've basically solved the question. And this isn't just for flaw questions, although we'll get into some flaw drills in a bit. That same skill Finding that gap is behind assumption, strengthen, and weaken questions also. They all revolve around the same logic bridge or gap. And so when you practice flaw questions, you are actually improving your entire logical reasoning game. Now let's talk about the patterns that appear again and again, because once you recognize these, LSAT arguments start to feel predictable, almost repetitive. You'll start reading a stimulus and you'll think to yourself, oh, I know what they're doing here. They're about to confuse correlation and causation again. And that is exactly the position you want to be in, where you can predict the flaw. It feels repetitive. It feels boring. That's good because you want it to feel easy, like you've done it all before, and you're not reasoning through the logic for the first time. Now, the first big category of flaws I'm going to talk about is comparison flaws. And this one is everywhere. A comparison flaw happens when an argument compares two things as if they were equal, but they ignore other factors. For example, we should avoid eating at fast food restaurants because they're more expensive than home-cooked meals. Sounds logical until you think a bit deeper. Are there no benefits to fast food? There are, of course. Maybe fast food saves you time. Maybe you value convenience more than cost. Or maybe your cooking is so bad that fast food is actually safer, or at least tastier. So the problem with this argument is they're assuming that price or cost is the only thing that matters. That is an incomplete comparison because we have no basis upon which to say that cost or price is more important than taste or safety or convenience. And so whenever an argument asks or says X is better than Y, you want to ask better in what way? If the author only looks at one dimension or values one consideration, that is your flaw. And you will see this pattern in dozens of different forms. For example, they'll say company A is more efficient than company B, or plan A is more successful than plan B. And each time they do this, they're quietly ignoring other important relevant variables. Now, the second big flaw category is causation flaws. And this is probably the favorite on the LSAT, the most common on the LSAT. And this one happens when an argument sees two things that happen together and they assume one caused the other. For example, students who join study groups score higher on the LSAT. Therefore, joining a study group improves your score. Maybe, but this is correlation causation, right? There's an association between participating in a study group and scoring higher, but does that mean that joining the study group is the cause of the score improvement? Maybe, alternate explanation, students who already care more about studying are the ones who join study groups. Or maybe both are caused by a third factor, like being highly motivated. In other words, maybe the motivation causes you to join the group and also causes you to study more. So correlation does not guarantee causation. And so on the LSAT, if you see statistics, surveys, or experiments, you want to ask, could there be another cause? Could it go the other way around? Or could both be caused by something else entirely? The right answer will point out that the argument assumes a cause where they only showed a relationship. And once you see that, you'll start catching these instantly because the LSAT uses them constantly. Now, the third category is conditional logic flaws. And this one might sound technical, but it's actually pretty simple once you understand it. A necessary condition is something that must be true for the conclusion to hold. In contrast, a sufficient condition is something that guarantees the conclusion, and the LSAT loves to flip them around. For example, if someone is a lawyer, they went to law school, John went to law school, therefore he's a lawyer. And thanks for the shout out in the comments, by the way. Glad you're finding it helpful. And so they're assuming that law school is sufficient, is necessary, when in reality it's sufficient, right? That's the backwards, they're getting it backwards. So again, if someone's a lawyer, they went to law school, John went to law school, therefore he's a lawyer. So being a lawyer requires that you went to law school, but is going to law school sufficient to become a lawyer? Or maybe there are many people who go to law school but never actually practice law. For example, you could go to law school and not pass the bar exam, or you could go to law school, become a lawyer, then retire, and no longer be a lawyer if you're not maintaining your credentialing, for example. And so whenever you see an argument using if, only if, must, or requires, I want you to slow down and check if they have confused or reversed the direction. And as a quick trick, you could draw it out. So A requiring B doesn't mean that B requires A. And if you're a top scorer, you can probably mentally diagram this pretty fast. If you're just starting off, you can write it down, of course, but over time, I hope you'll move away from that. The goal is that you see the structure of the logic, not the actual specific words of the argument. That's how you're going to get faster over time. Now, of course, it's one thing to spot the flaw. It's another thing to actually pick the right answer. And the wrong answers on the LSAT are designed to sound brilliant. They will use impressive language. They'll sprinkle in formal logic terms, but all of that will distract you from what the argument actually did. And there are 4 main types of trap answers. The first is where they are describing the wrong flaw. So technically, the choice describes a flaw, but it's not the flaw contained in this specific argument. And the LSAT writers will recycle real flaws because they sound plausible. You will see, for example, answer choices that talk about circular reasoning or ad hominem attacks, even when those things never actually happened in the argument. So you always want to go back to the stimulus and ask, did this argument actually do that? The second category is out-of-scope answers, where they introduce something new, like new evidence, new topics, or side issues that are irrelevant but sound reasonable. So I want you to remember that the right answer must describe the reasoning that is in front of you contained in the argument. You also want to look out for choices that are too extreme or too weak. For the LSAT, we want to be in that Goldilocks zone, not too strong, not too soft, just right in the middle. And words like always or never will often signal an exaggeration. Words like may or sometimes might water down the flaw too much. So you've got to read precisely. The tone, the degree of certainty all matter a great deal. And finally, we have choices that describe something true about the argument, but not actually a problem with the logic. So for example, let's say a choice said, the argument fails to define its terms. That's not automatically a flaw, unless there's some issue with definitions that causes the reasoning to break. So the way to avoid all 4 of these traps is to ground yourself in the stimulus. You always want to ask, what's the conclusion, what's the evidence, and what's the gap? And that last one, the gap, is what you want to focus on because it will point you to the real flaw every single time. Now, flaw questions can, of course, feel overwhelming because they're subtle, but they are extremely trainable. You can literally practice your way into seeing the patterns automatically, and that's what we're going to do today. Because after a couple dozen drills of flaws, identifying them, your brain will start predicting what's coming before you finish reading. So every single time you finish a logical reasoning question, not just flaw questions, ask yourself, if there were a flaw here, what would it be? Even when it must be true or strengthen, that habit, maintaining it, will force you to ID the structure and the logic. At first, it might be clunky or imprecise, but over time, it's going to become easy. It'll be effortless. If you practice these for just a few weeks, you will eventually be able to read any argument and instantly sense when something feels off, even before you can articulate why. And if you're not there yet, it's okay. You can get there. The reason it's not easy yet is just because you have not yet had enough exposure to the logical fallacies on the test. The LSAT writers are incredibly lazy. They repeat themselves. They reuse the same flaws, the same methods of reasoning over and over and over. And the only difference between me and you is I've had a lot more exposure. And so when I see a new argument or a new flaw, I can easily more automatically relate it back to all the other questions I've seen in the past, and I have that muscle memory. So when I see a new flaw, I'm not reasoning through it for the first time because I've seen it many, many times before in different disguises. And once you've done these enough, you will also see flaws beyond the world of the LSAT. You will see them in real life too, in articles, in social media, in talking with your family, your significant other. You will see flaws in their arguments and they will hate you if you point them out. So don't do it. Keep it in the LSAT world. And ask yourself, though, what assumption are they making here? It's the same skill. Logic is always going to be logic, whether it's in a courtroom or an advertisement or a political debate. And once you've practiced enough, it will become intuitive and you won't even need to label every flaw anymore. You'll just feel it when something is off. For example, if you see an argument that says, because this policy worked in one city, it will automatically work nationwide. And you will think to yourself, this is a sample flaw. They are overgeneralizing that what is true of this individual group can be extended to everyone. Or if they say, for example, a CEO claims that sales increased after the new ad campaign, does that mean the campaign caused the increase? Not necessarily. There could have been some other third variable that had an impact. And the most important part here is the mindset. You've got to stop thinking of flaw questions as traps because they are not out to trick you. They are out to reveal how carefully you think. The LSAT does not care how fast you are. It cares if you are precise. And when you slow down to ID the structure, your accuracy will improve. I've seen students rush through these thinking they get it, but they can't actually articulate the gap. And if you can't say the flaw in your own words in plain English, you don't actually understand it yet. And so make it your rule that before you look at the choices, you've got to explain the flaw to yourself like you're teaching it to a friend. If you can do that, you will almost always pick the right answer. And to sum it up, at its core, every flaw question is hiding one thing: a gap between what the author assumes and what they actually prove. You don't need to memorize 20 different kinds of flaws. You've just got to spot the moment when the logic leaks. And so, for example, if they say, the restaurant must be amazing because it's always full, what's the leap? Why is it necessarily amazing just because it's full? Maybe it's full because it's cheap. Maybe it's the only restaurant in town. And so that right there is a causal flaw. They are assuming, they're confusing correlation with causation. And so that's the big picture of how flaw questions work. But now I want to go through some real examples with you in real time and see how it actually feels when you're in the test, going through example after example. And so I've got a ton of flaw drills lined up here. We'll get through as many as we can over the next 40 minutes or so. Some are going to be quick. Some will go a bit deeper on. I invite you to type your answers in the chat. Even if you're not sure, don't just sit passively there and lurk. I want you to take a guess, make a commitment, and we're going to walk through it all together. And so here's how it's going to go. I'm going to show and read a real LSAT drill. You're going to have a couple seconds to think about it and drop your answer in the chat, just a single letter. Then I'm going to break down the reasoning, what the flaw was. Maybe we'll talk through why some wrong answers were tempting and what to look for next time. And so let's make this real. Here is drill number 1. I want you to think through the logic. Take a guess. What do you think? A, B, C, or D? If you're confident, type in a letter. If you're not, just put a question mark. But either way, I want you to commit. So this one goes, this LSAT explainer has 2 million views on TikTok, so it must be 100% correct. A, false dilemma. B, correlation versus causation. C, appeal to popularity. Or D, straw man. All right, so we've got Jamie saying C, appeal to popularity. We've got Nugana saying correlation versus causation. We've got Christina saying B. Let's see, so we have Jamie saying C, Nugana saying correlation versus causation. We've got Christina saying B. We've got CRD 2018 saying B. So we've got a mix, some folks saying correlation causation, some folks saying appeal to popularity. So I'll jump in here. The answer is in fact C, appeal to popularity. They're saying that the quantity or the number of views indicating popularity necessarily guarantees the accuracy or the fact that it is correct. And so I know a number of folks were actually going for correlation versus causation. Let's talk through why. So we're saying there's an correlation causation would be saying there's an association between two things, therefore one caused the other. But they're not actually making any kind of causal claim here. They're not saying one thing caused the other or that one thing led to a necessary result. They're just making a claim regarding the accuracy of the LSAT explainer based on the large number of views that it had. And so I could see why B is tempting, but again, maybe there's some sort of association with the number of views, but there's no actual causal claim being made here. And so for that reason, I would not say correlation causation. In fact, it is C, appeal to authority. Let's try out another one. And by the way, Maddie, yes, Maddie, you said C, appeal to popularity. Yes, that was in fact correct. Next one, we've got my last 3 practice tests tanked after I started using a Mike Ross style fake Harvard mug. The mug must therefore be cursed. A, post hoc fallacy, B, slippery slope, C, circular reasoning, and D, false dilemma. Put an answer in the chat, please, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just put a question mark, make some sort of commitment to get yourself out of the lurking mode and into more active engagement here to take charge of your LSAT prep. So when you're ready, put your answers in the chat. A, post hoc fallacy, B, slippery slope, C, circular reasoning, D, false dilemma. We've got Jamie saying A, post hoc fallacy. We've got Brianna saying A, post hoc fallacy as well. We've got CRD 2018 saying A, post hoc fallacy. Anyone else? So we've got 3 A's here so far. We have Nugana saying A as well. And so in fact, yes, it is a post hoc fallacy. One thing came before another, therefore the first thing caused the second thing. Yes, Christina A, also fantastic. So post hoc fallacy is actually a version of correlation causation. We have an association between 2 things, therefore one caused the other. And so the use of the mug came before the practice test scores tanking, therefore the mug is supposedly the cause of the practice test scores tanking. Not necessarily, of course, could be a coincidence. Well done, everybody. Next one. We've gotten 5 easy logical reasoning questions in a row, so the next one has to be brutal. A, false analogy, B, circular reasoning, C, gambler's fallacy, D, composition fallacy. Please put your answers in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just put a question mark and we'll walk through it together. We've got Jamie and Nugana both saying C. We've got Brienne saying C, gambler's fallacy. We've got Christina saying C, gambler's fallacy. We've got Valentina saying C, gambler's fallacy as well. Awesome, folks. You all nailed this one exactly right. So we've had 5 easy ones in a row. Therefore, the next one will not be easy and will be brutal is the idea. The gambler's fallacy is assuming that what came before will impact the likelihood of what's going forward. And so, of course, we've got to consider that maybe each individual question operates independently of the others, and what happened before will not impact what is likely to happen with the next one in the future. It's called gambler's fallacy because you could think of it like a slot machine or playing poker where I've lost so many before, therefore the next one's guaranteed to be a win. They could all be operating independent of each other like flipping a coin. If you flip heads 10 times, the next one is still a 50-50 shot of being either heads or tails. What happened before does not dictate what will happen going forward. You all are nailing these. And so next one, number 4, if we let students skip one LSAT homework assignment, soon they'll stop studying entirely, join a suits binge marathon, and never come back. A, ad hominem, B, false cause, C, slippery slope, or D, appeal to emotion. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat, A, B, C, or D. If you're not sure, just put a question mark. All right, we've got Nugana saying D for this one. We've got Jumpier Wolf saying C. Christina saying C. Valentina's got a question mark. Jamie says B. Brienne says C. So we've got a mix here. So we've got 3 folks saying C, Jamie's saying B, Nugana's saying D. CRD 2018 is torn between B and C. Okay, so y'all are on the right track. CRD 2018, please pick one of them, make a commitment to something, because that's what you'll have to do on test day. Just encouraging you to start getting in that test-taking mindset here. But it's all good. So what they're saying here is that if we let them skip one assignment, soon they'll start studying entirely, join the marathon, and never come back. So I see CRD is going for B as their final answer there. Let's see what we have. So let's see. So in fact, it is C, slippery slope. So congrats to all of you who chose C. I could see why B was tempting. So let's walk through it. So C, slippery slope, is in a way kind of catastrophizing, saying that if we budge a little bit, it's going to have this ripple or domino effect leading to a catastrophic larger outcome as a result. So we let them skip one assignment and then they'll stop studying entirely and never come back. Ripple effect of massive consequences, failing to consider that the impact could be rather limited. Maybe if we let them skip just one assignment, it's going to be okay. They won't necessarily stop studying entirely just because of bending the rules just once here or there. False cause, totally different flaw, different method of reasoning. We'll get to one of those in just a little bit. In the meantime, I want to go on to the next one here. Number 5, how can you debate logical reasoning flaws when you missed 2 necessary assumption questions last week? So we've got A, red herring, B, ad hominem, C, false dilemma, and D, straw man. So put your answer in the chat, A, B, C, or D. Again, A, red herring, B, ad hominem, C, false dilemma, D, straw man. See, we have one in the chat already, but I'll give folks a minute before I reveal any answers or indications of answers. All right, so we have a few folks here in the chat. Brianne is saying B. We've got CRD 2018 saying B. Jumpy Your Wolf saying B. Christina saying B. Jamie saying B. Y'all are nailing it. Exactly right. So we have 5 folks saying B, and the audience here is entirely correct. Ad hominem, personal attack. In other words, just because you missed 2 necessary assumption questions last week does not mean that you are banned from being able to debate logical reasoning flaws. It's possible that maybe you did 1,000 questions last week, only missed 2, pretty good success rate. You could still be an expert and be perfectly capable of holding valuable or valid opinions on logical reasoning flaws. So you're getting some questions wrong doesn't mean that you are incapable of having a valid opinion about logical reasoning flaws in the future. So we've done 5 questions so far. Curious to know, folks, just tally up your own successes here. How many did you get right out of the first 5? Did you get all 5 correct? Did you get 3 out of 5? Did you get 4 out of 5? Did you get 0 out of 5? Whatever the outcome is, totally cool. Everyone's got to start somewhere. And if you're taking the LSAT in January, February, April, June, or beyond, you've got plenty of time to improve and familiarize yourself with these logical fallacies. And by the way, if you'd like my help, if you want to talk through LSAT flaws, I see that Christina here got 4 out of 5 so far. That's awesome. If you'd like my help, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. Link below the video on YouTube. Link in the chat here on YouTube as well. Link in my bio on Instagram. Happy to meet with anyone out there doing these right now. Happy to help you out. I see Jamie got 4 out of 5 and never even heard of some of these flaw names before. So that's pretty cool considering that you're just kind of getting into these flaw names now. Brienne also 4 out of 5. Awesome. 80%. That's pretty solid. That probably puts you in, say, roughly the 160 range or so. Of course, very small sample here, and reading comp is a thing too, but you're on the right track anyway. If you want my help, again, unpluggedprep.com/start. Happy to meet with anyone personally and talk through your situation. Brienne says, thankful. I just took critical thinking and symbolic logic, LOL. Awesome. Yeah, all of that's really helpful. Not that you have to study critical thinking or logic, but it can help to get you in the LSAT mindset. if you're taking the LSAT in the next year or so, probably best to just focus on LSAT materials. But if by chance you're also interested in studying critical thinking, obviously couldn't hurt. Now, see, Nugana says, I'm taking it next week, fingers crossed. Okay, good luck to you taking it next week. Glad that you're here anyway. Good to get a refresher and get some familiarity with these in case you need a booster in your understanding of these flaws. Next one here, number 6. My study buddy reviewed for 8 hours straight and still got a 152. Studying clearly does not help. A, hasty generalization. B, false analogy. C, confusing necessary and sufficient conditions. D, ad hominem. We've got some folks starting to put their comments in the chat. In the meantime, Valentina is saying, I'm not conversant with most of these flaw types. That's okay. Everybody's got to start somewhere. That's why I'm doing classes like these to help familiarize folks with the classic logical fallacies. And over time, you'll learn them more and more. And so it's a matter of exposure to get the pattern recognition down. You'll get them with time. So we have some folks answering here. Jump Your Wolf says A. Jamie says A. Brianne says A. Valentina says C. Nugana says C. CRD 2018 says C. So we have a mix of A's and C's here. So studied for 8 hours, reviewed for 8 hours straight, still got a 152. Studying clearly does not help. And so I'm going to say here, the answer is A, hasty generalization. I see Christina's also saying A as well. Awesome, exactly right. So hasty generalization because this one individual, this one study buddy, reviewed for 8 hours and still got 152. So 2 things. What is true of that one individual study buddy may not be true of folks in general. Maybe there are many other people who reviewed for 8 hours straight and scored much better. Alternatively, another possibility, maybe they would have done even worse had they not studied for 8 hours straight. I know that most folks are aiming for much higher than 152, but maybe this person would have gotten a 140 if they hadn't studied for 8 hours straight. So maybe studying did help them and they would have done worse. Regardless, this one individual is not necessarily representative of LSAT students in general. Now, confusing necessary and sufficient conditions would look very different. That would be like saying the example I gave earlier about going to law school and becoming a lawyer. So every lawyer went to law school, but not everyone who goes to law school becomes a lawyer. So that's confusing what is required with what is sufficient to guarantee a result. So that's not the case here. The logic here is not really conditional. It's more saying that they studied for 8 hours straight and did not achieve a desired result, or they scored poorly. And therefore, studying does not help, meaning there is not a causal relationship between studying and doing better, is their claim. For sufficient necessary confusion, you want them saying there is some sort of association between the two. So I hope that clears that one up. Next example, number 7. There's no published explanation for how L. Woods aced the LSAT, so it must have been sheer luck. A, false cause. B, absence of evidence. C, begging the question. Or D, composition fallacy. I'll give folks a moment. Then when you're ready, drop your answer in the chat, A, B, C, or D. I see some folks already typing it, but I'll give a moment before I reveal. All right, we have a bunch of folks coming in now. Jump Your Wolf says B. Christina says B. Jamie says B. Brianne says B. CRD 2018 says B. Valentina says B. Tanya says B. Nugana says B. Wow. I've got to start giving you guys some harder examples here. Y'all are nailing these. Exactly right. So it is in fact B, absence of evidence. There's no explanation for how she aced it, so it must have been sheer luck. In other words, just because no one has shared the explanation for how she did it, therefore there is no explanation for how she did it. And in the absence of an explanation, must have been sheer luck. But the absence of a published explanation does not mean that no explanation exists, just means that no one has published it. So maybe there is a plausible explanation. And if you watched Legally Blonde, you would see that she was inside studying while she saw people partying outside, right? She looked out the window, saw them celebrating, but she was stuck inside with the books, right? So we do have an explanation, just wasn't published, but there is a plausible reason why she was able to get her 179, right? So the absence of documentation does not mean that there is no plausible explanation for how she did it. Well done. Well done, everybody. Next one, number 8. Our law school hired 2 former Harvard grads as professors and enrollment spiked. The hires must be the reason for why they spiked. A, post hoc fallacy, B, ad hominem, C, false analogy, or D, circular reasoning. All right, see some answers coming in here in the chat. Give folks a minute. A lot of them coming in. Okay, cool. So we see here we have Jump Your Wolf saying A. We have Brienne saying A. CRD 2018 saying A. Valentina, Jamie saying A. Valentina saying A. Jamie saying A. Tanya saying D. Christina saying A. All right, folks. So it is, in fact, A, post hoc fallacy. Again, post hoc means it came before it, therefore it caused it. This is a very specific version of the classic correlation causation fallacy. So they hired these 2 former Harvard grads, then enrollment increased. The hires must be the reason. So the hiring happened before the enrollment spiked. Therefore, the hiring caused the enrollment to spike. Could be a total coincidence. Maybe the enrollments happened for some completely different reason. Or maybe, let's say, the law school suddenly got some huge donations. The donations allowed them to hire the 2 former Harvard grads, and the donations also allowed them to do a ton more marketing to increase enrollments. But the hiring did not have any impact on the enrollments. Specifically, both of them were caused by a third factor, like the donations and the increased budget to devote to hiring and marketing. So that is, in fact, A, post hoc fallacy. Circular reasoning, choice D, which I know someone chose, is really more about when the evidence and conclusion are identical and one's just paraphrasing the other without actually giving a new reason. But here, the evidence and conclusion are different. They're not merely repeating themselves, and so it wouldn't be circular reasoning for this one. Next, number 9. You either support extending LSAT time accommodations or you hate fairness. A, red herring, B, straw man, C, false dilemma, or D, ad hominem. I'll give folks a minute. And when you're ready, just type your answer in the chat. If you're not sure, just put a question mark, but please do commit to something. We have some folks leaving their comments here, but I'll give it another minute so as not to spoil for anybody else. All right, so we have a mix of answers coming in here. We've got, let's see here, Nugana saying D, Jump Your Wolf saying C, Tanya saying D, Jamie saying C, Brianne saying C with a question mark, CRD 28, Christina saying A, CRD 2018 saying C, Valentina saying C with a question mark. So we got a mix here, but I think the most popular answer was, in fact, C, which is correct. So C, false dilemma, meaning, in other words, we've got a false choice between 2 different options, when in reality, there are additional possible options. And so the dilemma is falsely saying there are only 2 possibilities. Either you support extending the accommodations or you hate fairness. Is it possible that you do not support extending accommodations, but you also want things to be fair? Yes, of course, that's a possibility, right? So the false dilemma flaw is when the arguer does not adequately allow for nuance or moderation or a third possible opinion. They don't see shades of gray, they see things in black and white. And so it could be that you feel like LSAT accommodations are already being extended sufficiently, and you would not want to widen the possible accommodations or further lower the bar for granting accommodations, but you still do want things to be fair. You just feel like they're fair already. And by the way, a bit of LSAT trivia for folks out there wondering, the Law School Admission Council, LSAC, has become a lot more liberal in granting extra time accommodations in recent years. And there are some people who argue that they have become a bit too liberal, making it too easy to get accommodations for things like extra time, extra breaks due to, say, test anxiety or ADHD. And as a result, there is an increase in LSAT scores, this so-called LSAT score inflation, meaning it's easier than ever before to get higher scores. And that's why LSAT score medians are rising. And so that's kind of the logic or the timeliness behind the drill here, the topic. But regardless, the answer here was C, false dilemma, failing to consider there could be a third possible opinion to hold. That would be a valid opinion to hold. Now, A, red herring, that's more when you have some detail that's totally out of left field that has no bearing on the argument. This comes from the Sherlock Holmes stories, I think, is the origin of that, where at least it's brought up there, where there's some additional detail that has no impact on the argument. But here, the two opinions are both topically relevant to the theme, but they're just failing to consider a third possibility. Next, number 10. Every time I wear my future lawyer hoodie, my practice score goes up. Clearly, the hoodie is magic. So the choices: A, correlation versus causation; B, hasty generalization; C, gambler's fallacy; or D, appeal to authority. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat. If you're not sure, just put a question mark. All right, so we have some folks leaving comments here. Jumpy Wolf saying A, Jamie saying A, Valentina saying A, CRT 2018 saying A, Nugana saying A, Christina saying A. So a whole flood here of A's. Y'all are nailing it. A is in fact correct. Correlation versus causation. So there's an association between wearing the hoodie and scores going up. They're therefore claiming that the hoodie is magic. The hoodie is responsible for the increase in scores. So this is kind of like the post hoc fallacy, right, that we were talking about earlier, where one thing came before the other, therefore the first thing caused the second thing. So if A had not said correlation causation and it had instead said post hoc fallacy, that would still be a decent choice. The reason that I put correlation causation here instead of post hoc fallacy is because they're making a general claim about this on a continuing or recurring basis. They're saying every time rather than this one time. But y'all nailed it. Well done. And Sean is saying this is so engaging. Awesome. I'm glad you're finding it engaging. That's the whole point here, is that we're doing some real drill examples, bringing it a bit more to life. And by the way, folks, are you all liking this format? Is this better for you than just doing theory only or just doing general study strategies only? I thought that might be more fun to do some real examples to make this come alive. And so if you're all liking this, I could do this on a more regular basis. I really just want to make these classes what you all are interested in and what's really helping you. So I thought for today, I would do a mix of the general flaw theory and then get into the application pretty quickly afterwards. And so Brienne's saying yes. Christina's saying yes, it's helpful. Valentina, yes, I like it. Awesome, cool. All right, so we'll keep doing it then. We've still got some more time for today, so we could do some more examples if you all would like. Got number 11 here. Each section of the prep book is great, so the whole book must be flawless. A, false cause; B, composition fallacy; C, appeal to emotion; and D, circular reasoning. So when you have your answer, please drop it in the chat. If you're not sure, just put a question mark, but please do commit to something, since you will also have to commit on test day when it matters and when you're being scored. So we have a ton of answers here coming in. Jump Your Wolf saying B, Nugana saying B, Jamie saying B, CRT 2018 saying B, Christina saying B, Brienne saying B, Nugana likes the format, says this is good, awesome, cool. So you all are correct. It is in fact B as in Bravo, composition fallacy. Specifically, we're talking about part to whole, right? So they're saying that what is true of each individual part would be true of the book as a whole. But imagine, for example, that we had a prep book where each individual chapter was high quality, but as a whole, it was kind of disjointed. So let's say we had a book that claimed to be comprehensive, super thorough as a standalone LSAT prep textbook. But then you looked at the table of contents of the book, and each individual chapter was only covering flaw questions. And it wasn't covering strengthen, weaken, necessary assumption, sufficient assumption, parallel, role of statement. It wasn't covering reading comp. It wasn't covering test day prep. It just had 20 different chapters only about flaw questions specifically. Each chapter might be high quality, might be useful, but that would not be a great LSAT prep textbook in general because it wasn't covering all the other topics that you need to know. So that would not be what is true of each individual chapter being high quality or being great, would not be true of the book as a whole being flawless or comprehensive, which is why, of course, for these free classes that I'm running, we're going to cover different topics on different days. We're not just going to only cover flaws. We'll cover other question types, other methods of reasoning in addition. Another example on the same flaw would be, let's say you're baking a cake. You look at the list of ingredients on the cake to make the cake, and one of the ingredients is salt. Turns out that when you're baking, when you're cooking, you oftentimes are going to add a pinch of salt. But adding a single pinch of salt to the cake would not make the cake salty because there are other ingredients that outweigh the salt. For example, you might add a pinch of salt, but add a ton of sugar, and the sugar overshadows the salt. So what is true of one part, being salty, is not true of the whole. A part could be salty, but the whole could be sweet, just as an example. Well done, everybody. Next, number 12, you can't prove that law school rankings are meaningless, so they must be important. A, false cause. B, absence of evidence. C, slippery slope. Or D, circular reasoning. All right, we have some answers coming in here, but I'll give folks another minute. All right, we had a handful come in. We got Jamie saying B, Jump Your Wolf saying B, Valentina saying B, Nugana saying B, CRD 2018 saying B. So a flood of Bs. It is in fact B. Awesome. Absence of evidence. The key phrase you want to look for here is you can't prove. So you cannot prove, you cannot provide evidence. You don't have the evidence that they're meaningless, so they must be important. But it's possible that you do not have the capacity to prove they are meaningless, but they could still be meaningless. You're not obligated to necessarily prove or demonstrate they're meaningless. You don't need to be a statistician, for example, or to even make the argument, but they could be meaningless regardless. It's really a matter of simply knowing what is important to you. And so absence of evidence means just because you have not demonstrated something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So for example, people will use absence of evidence to supposedly prove or disprove the existence of God, saying you can't prove there's a God, therefore there isn't one. Or you can't prove there's not a God, therefore there is a God. Lacking the evidence doesn't mean the evidence doesn't exist, just means that you don't have the capacity to provide the evidence at this exact moment. Same thing goes for people making claims about the existence or lack of existence of aliens. They will endlessly debate this when it could just be that we don't possess the adequate technology right now in the year 2025 to prove or disprove their existence. But it may come along in the future with new tools, new technology, for example. Well done, everybody. Next one, number 13. This LSAT hack went viral on Reddit, so it has to work. A, appeal to a popularity, B, correlation causation, C, straw man, D, false analogy. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat. If you're not sure, just put a question mark, but I invite you to commit to something because you will have to commit on test day, so better to get into the habit now. We've got a flood of answers here on this. Folks are solving these pretty fast. We got Jumpy Wolf saying A, Valentina saying A, Christina saying A, Jamie saying A, Brianne saying A. Awesome, folks. So appeal to popularity. In fact, yes is the answer. The key here is they're saying it went viral on Reddit, and that is their evidence for it having to work. There are plenty of things that go viral that are totally invalid, flawed, incorrect, conspiracy theories, spam, what have you. Doesn't mean it's true just because it's popular. The popularity does not guarantee validity. So keep in mind that we need to consider things on their actual merits, on the case they're making, not necessarily on just the virality or popularity. We could do a couple more before we wrap up for today. Number 14, all my friends prepped using the Socratic review method, so it must be the best method. A, appeal to authority. B, hasty generalization. C, correlation versus causation. Or D, appeal to popularity. When you have your answer, please drop it in the chat. If you're not sure, just put a question mark. So we have a mix of answers this time. Interesting. So not everybody's lined up on this, which is okay. Makes for a more interesting discussion. Don't want them all to be too easy, right? All right, so we've got Jumpier Wolf saying D, Valentina saying A, Valentina saying D now, Jamie saying B, Brianne saying D, Christina saying D. So mix of answers here. The answer is, in fact, D, appeal to popularity. I'll say that's the best answer here. Now, if they're saying all my friends, they're appealing to the fact that all the friends use this and saying, therefore, based on all these people using it, it must be the best. Now, why isn't it appeal to authority? The friends are not supposed experts. For appeal to authority, you would say, like, there's this doctor who endorses this, or this scientist who endorses this, or this scholar or professor or politician, someone making a claim outside their area of expertise. But these are just friends. They're not saying this person has a PhD or something like that. Now, hasty generalization, I could see where that's appealing. We're going from, say, like a small group to making a much larger claim. But usually that's more like what we're dealing with, a group that is maybe unrepresentative, and they're too hastily generalizing on the basis of that group. So that would be like, you have these psychology labs in college where they will study college students. They'll give you 10, 20 bucks to participate in the study, and then they'll make a generalization about the population as a whole, failing to consider that what is true of 18 through 22-year-olds in a particular geography is not necessarily true of the general population. But they're saying that just because the people use this method, therefore it's the best. So I'm going to say that, well, I could see why B is tempting. I think what's more going on here is the appeal to all the friends and saying they're all doing this one thing, therefore it's the best. I'd say that D is a better answer, but B, hasty generalization, I could see why that's appealing, but I'm going to say D is a better pick for that one. Next, number 15. If we give one student an LSAT retake for free, soon everyone will demand unlimited retakes and free bar prep courses. A, circular reasoning. B, slippery slope. C, appeal to emotion. Or D, composition fallacy. For those just joining, when you have your answer, please drop it in the chat. If you're not sure, put a question mark. So we have a flood of people here, all saying B. Jumpier Wolf says B. Christina says B. Brianne says B. New Guinea says B. New Ghana says B. And then Jamie says B. Valentina says A. So the answer here is, in fact, B as in Bravo, slippery slope. Similar to the earlier example, we had them bending the rules once, giving one person an LSAT retake for free. Then they're catastrophizing a whole chain reaction of events, leading to everyone demanding unlimited retakes and free bar prep courses, just demanding more and more free stuff, unlimited all the time, based on one bending of the rules, one case. We give one student the free retake, and they're generalizing and assuming this chain reaction of consequences. Now, circular reasoning, again, would have been where we have the evidence and conclusion being identical with no real difference between the two, not what's happening here. The evidence and conclusion are distinct. They are different. They are saying different things. Next time we go into flaws, I'll have some circular reasoning examples to share with everyone. So out of the 15 drills here that we did, take a look at your accuracy on the 15 as a whole. How many did you get right out of these 15? Were you solid 15 out of 15, 100% accuracy? Were you getting 12 out of 15? Did you get 10 out of 15? Did you get 0 out of 15? It's okay. Everybody's got to start somewhere. Wherever you're at, we'll just build up your understanding from there. But if you can, if you've been keeping track in a notebook of some kind on your notes app, just drop in the chat how many you got out of these first 15 drills. Is this your first time doing flaw questions? Are you new to this? If so, it's okay. If you're not, that's okay too. We just look at where you are today versus yesterday and aim to get better every single day. We've only got a month till the test in November, but if you're taking it in January, you got roughly 2 months. If you're taking it in February, you've got 3 months. Plenty of time to improve significantly. Jumpier Wolf got 12 out of 15, but says I got on late and missed the first 3. So we can't penalize you for missing the first 3 if you weren't here. That means you really got 12 out of 12 that you did, which is awesome, 100%. Well done. Jamie's saying 13 out of 15. Pretty solid accuracy there. Brienne says 14 out of 15. Not my first time. That's okay, still solid. LSAC's going to say your accuracy is super high. Christina says was 10. What was 10? I missed it. If you email me, Christina, or you book that free call with me, I could share a drill number 10 with you. Valentina is saying it's my first time doing flaw questions. Awesome. Welcome to the club. It'll only get better from here. Y'all are nailing these pretty solid 12, 13, 15, 14. Christina says possibly 13 out of 15. Pretty solid. That's pretty high accuracy. I think I'm going to have to give you all some harder drills next time since you're getting too many correct. But you all are well on the way to getting top scores here. If you want to go over a harder question, of course, I can cover more of those in the future. And if you want me to share a list of flaw types and their subtypes, I could definitely do that next time I cover flaw questions. I could open with that before getting into some more examples. And if you want to talk through your situation personally with me, I'm happy to help. You can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me personally. I'll get on a call with you privately one-on-one. Unpluggedprep.com/start. Link below the video on YouTube. Link in my bio on Instagram. It's also the pinned comment here in the chat on YouTube. That's an open invitation. I will meet with as many of you as I possibly can in the coming days and weeks to help you get ready for your LSAT whenever you're taking it. November, January, February, April, June, or beyond. I love doing this. I love talking LSAT. This is my life. It's my career. I'm happy to help. I'll be on tomorrow, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, 11 a.m. Pacific, covering a new topic. Jamie's asking, do I have a schedule for these sessions? Like, what topics are each day? Fantastic question. Well, I'm doing these every weekday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific for the foreseeable future in the absence of holidays or vacations. But in terms of topics, I'm open to suggestions. So for those of you who are in the thick of LSAT studying, what topics would you like me to cover? If you could, please drop in the chat any requests. Do you want me to cover logical reasoning or reading comp or test day prep or law school admissions? Do you want me to talk about getting ready for a particular LSAT test date, like the test in January or February or April or beyond? I'm open to requests, open to ideas. I have my own ideas, of course. There's roughly 17 different types of logical reasoning questions. Then you got reading comp as well. Then there's pacing and time management, doing individual sections, full-length exams to build up your endurance. We've also got law school application essays to work on. whatever your needs and requests are, just drop them in the chat. I see Christina is saying necessary and sufficient assumption questions. Jamie is also saying necessary, sufficient assumptions, and also reading comp. Brienne's saying, I'm grateful for this, on break from school till January, so you're very bored. Well, the LSAT will keep you busy because there's a lot to cover. And so I'm happy to walk through these with you over the next couple months or so. Nugan is saying, I'd love more on weaken and strengthen questions. We could cover that too. And so I'm sensing some themes here. I feel like folks are liking the logical reasoning focus. I'm gathering, broadly speaking. Maybe tomorrow we'll do necessary and sufficient assumptions. How about that, since there were a couple folks mentioning that? And then beyond that, I'll cover the others. Maybe next week, I'll cover reading comp, strengthen, and weaken. And so, folks, thank you all for joining. This was a blast. I'm glad you found it helpful. Again, if you want to talk through your situation personally, just go to the link below the video or in the chat, unpluggedprep.com/start. Free private one-on-one LSAT tutoring lessons with me personally. I'll meet with as many of you as I possibly can. Book a call with me through the link below, and I'll see you all tomorrow, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.